welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today for this session, which is an introduction to the Perform platform for office ratings. This is a session specifically for our VIPs in the NABERS community, our assessors. My name's Zoe Baker. I'm a sector lead in the NABERS team, and I'm your host today, basically presenting a lot of work that other people have worked really hard on for the last couple of years, and that's a really big pleasure for us. This is a really momentous release that we've got coming up, and we're really delighted to be able to give everyone a bit of a sneak peek today of what it looks like and how that's going to be to use. So we begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of all the lands that we're joining from today. That's the beauty of doing online events. We get to stay where we are. I'm dialing in from Gadigal country today here in Sydney, and welcome you from wherever you are dialing in from, and acknowledge the traditional custodians of all of the lands that we're on today, and acknowledge the elders past, present and emerging, and that kind of centering of people I think is really important to keep in mind as we do those acknowledgements. So as I said, it's a great pleasure for me to welcome you all to the session today. A couple of quick housekeeping notes. We, as I said at the start, we are recording the session. So it would be great if everyone can keep in mind to keep your microphones on mute. That just reduces the sound in the session. But you're very welcome to keep your cameras on. That's great to see some faces, and it's one of the downsides of online is that we don't have as much face, but this is great if we can see some of you throughout the session. We will also have an opportunity to do some Q&A, and you can drop your questions and comments throughout the session in the chat box that should be available on your screen. So feel free to pop those in. If we can answer that throughout the session, we might respond. Otherwise, we'll save those questions up until the very end. So our agenda today, welcome, we're already halfway through that, great. We're then going to hear from James Zeltz, who is our head of product development at NABERS, and he's just going to give us a little bit of background on the design process and how we develop these new tools, kind of, I guess, insight into how much work goes into it. We're then going to have a chat with an assessor, don't take our word for it, about how the Perform platform works. And so very kindly, Matt Greening from Net Zero has agreed to talk about the assessors across Net Zero who've been using the platform for shopping centre and residential aged care and retirement living ratings. And so they've got some experience of kind of how it works, which a few of those insights will be really applicable as we come into everybody else who does office ratings starting to use the tool as well. So that's really exciting. And then what we're here for, which is to get a bunch of information about how the platform will work, a bunch of the sort of information that you'll need to know as we lead up to that release, and kind of how that will all work. And then a really exciting demo of the platform itself and getting to see kind of behind the scene. And this is a sneak peek because you won't have logins until we're getting ready to launch. But Monique and Rachel from our design team are going to walk us through doing a rating and sort of show some of the features and some of the improvements and exciting things. So we're really excited and can't wait to sort of take you through it and show you what it looks like. And hopefully you're all super excited. So I'm going to hand over to James now. And thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Zoe. And thanks for taking the slides down. It's great to be able to see everybody's faces today. What a pleasure. Some that I've seen before and many that I haven't. I'll just reintroduce myself. I'm James Zeltz. I'm head of product development at NABERS. So the development of the software platforms falls under my remit. So you can put your complaints in the chat. So this year, NABERS has been around 25 years, and I can see in the room that there's no one over the age of 25, I'm sure. So I'm sure none of you were there for that. And one thing that's been a consistent across those years, as I understand it, and certainly in the last few years that I've been at NABERS, is that we've always prided ourselves on being on the cutting edge in a number of ways. And one of those is in technology, and Rate and Members, when they were launched, were quite advanced for their time. But use it every day, and so do we. And I think we can all say that that's no longer the case. And that's because technology, it changes fast, right? It changes really fast. And I think that's the reason really that we've invested really heavily in NABERS Perform, the new platform, to make things easier for us and for you as our NABERS assessors and auditors and building managers and building owners. And where a lot of this comes from is now I am a massive advocate for human-centered design or user-centered design, which means we don't just sort of dream up what you might like and go off and spend a lot of time building that. We ask you, like, what is it that you would like? How can we build this? And then as we're building things, we try and check in with you and make sure they're heading in the right direction and change things as we go. And that's what we've done with this project. We've spent a lot of time chatting with you all, not all of you, but a lot of you. And I think through this process, we've been able to make some massive improvements. And what we've learned through chatting with everyone has really helped shape the platform into what is a massive improvement over the existing platforms. And you're going to hear from some assessors a bit later on what that actually looks like. And we're going to show you what that looks like. But there's no denying that the jump from where we are at the moment with rated members to where we're heading with NABERS Perform is quite huge. And leading up to this release, we've talked with, we're involved in detail about 20 assessors in the last little while to understand how we best deliver things like premises and tenancies and the offices, hours, areas and computers area and the renewable energy indicator. And we've done that through user testing sessions and all sorts of things. But that number of people that we've involved, of you that we've involved, is a lot higher when we include all the little bits and pieces of feedback we receive every day from all of you. I'm really excited for this move. I don't want to talk too long. I want to get into the detail. I know you guys want to see it and hear what's coming up. But I just wanted to thank you all. Genuine thank you from me personally, and from all of NABERS for your involvement and your continued feedback and pushing us to improve what we do and yourselves. So thanks so much. Back to you, Zoe.
Thank you so much, James. And yeah, everyone at NABERS is really appreciative for the ongoing input that you, assessor community, give to the program. And that's, yeah, where we are really grateful for such an engaged and friendly assessor community. And speaking of friendly assessors, I'd like to invite Matt Greening from Net Zero to unmute and jump on, say hello, and we'll ask you a couple of questions, totally off the cuff and not at all pre-prepared. Thanks for joining us, Matt.
That's my pleasure, Zoe. Hi, everybody.
Matt, I know that you've got a bunch of assessors who you work with, and so I sort of, this is a pre-prepared question that I know you've spoken to a couple of people on the team about. But the first thing I wanted to ask was, what's the biggest difference in using the Perform platform? As I said a little earlier, you've been using it for shopping centres and RightCall ratings. What has that been, that difference coming from the legacy platforms?
I think that it's certainly a quantum leap ahead from NABERS rate, as James was important. The biggest improvement, I think, is the copy, or one of the biggest ones is copy and pasting into the tool. I'm sure most assessors, we have our own spreadsheets where we do all our preparation work. We get the data reasonably clean and then copy and paste it into the rating tool, whether that be NABERS rate or Perform. And that is much easier to do in Perform than it has been in the past. The system is much more intuitive as well. It leads you through the process, which is great. And having the pre-populating of the previous year's billing, that going through gives you a bit of a check. And you can also see if there's any anomalies from last year as to why it's different this year, and that's quite helpful as well. But actually, one of the biggest ones that we find, and like most assessors, we sometimes get a little can I say, to be nice, some level 1 audit questions that come to us. And, you know, I know I've shaken my head a few times and said, yes, I know that's a problem, or that's an issue. If you had given me somewhere where I could write that, well, you wouldn't have to ask me that question. And now Perform does that. It's got a comments field on each page or each section, and you can write little comments in there about why. You know, a good one is when a submeter doesn't need to be validated. The system still wants you to put a date in there, but you just put a date in and write a comment in and say it doesn't need to be validated for whatever reason. And or it's a, you know, the embedded network owner has an exemption, etc. You can put that in there. That stops all that to-ing and fro-ing and the difficulties you have getting through that process.
Amazing. I mean, those are all the things that we're particularly proud of as well. So it's great to hear that, and that those are things that have that you guys have noticed. Any tips for assessors who haven't been using the platform and are making the switch to Perform?
I think, as I alluded to before, it doesn't matter what tool we're using. I think it's important that you clarify and cleanse your data before you go put it into the rating tool. Because even, you know, adding rows and deleting rows in Perform is much easier than in Rate. I'm not sure you could even do it in Rate, but anyway, that is much easier. But it's still, I think, there's a little bit of a risk in the data, as always. It's not always perfect. So, you know, the try and limit the amount of adjustments you need to make to your rows and your columns and your data by preparing the data as best you can beforehand. A couple of tips: make sure you have enough. There is a limit on or a standard limit on the number of submeter rows for exclusion meters. So just make sure you can get them added, but it's much easier to work out if you've got enough rows before you start putting your data in, and just do a bit of a check there. And I think you've got to go in the NABERS team and they can add more rows into it. Like the limit's like 100 or 150 or something. So it's not too often that you hit that limit. And the other one is that there's been a few little, and I don't know whether these have been addressed or not, some little issues around when you use the filter function. So just be careful. And our guys have said it's important you save your data before you use the filter. And then as soon as you finish using the filter, just save your data again before you change the tab. We haven't had it lately. I don't know whether we're just doing that or NABERS have fixed it. I'm not 100% sure, but we did lose a little bit of data. That's ages ago now. It's probably 12 months ago when shopping centres first came out. So that's probably my biggest tips.
Right. I mean, saving as you go is always a good advice, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. Yep, it is.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us and giving us that little bit of insight. I know for many assessors, they aren't doing those other ratings. So it's really good that we've got a good handful of assessors who have been doing the ones that are already built into the Perform platform. You've been able to kind of forge ahead and share some of those tips. We're really grateful. Thank you so much, Matt.
No worries. My pleasure.
Amazing. Great. Well, let's get into the next exciting stage. I'm going to hand over to my colleagues Nick and Rachel, who are going to talk us through the platform, everything you need to know about it, and give us that demo. Over to you guys.
Great. Thank you very much, Zoe. So just by way of introduction, my name is Monique. I'm called Nick at NABERS because, as a lot of you already know, there's another Monique already here who's Mon. So I'm just going to share my screen and then take you through some kind of important things that you need to know. And then Rachel will be joining me, and we will then give you a live demo that we've rehearsed many times, and it's gone to plan every single time, but don't want to jinx ourselves. We have a backup in case that, you know, the video call makes things a little bit hairy, but it should be all good. So hopefully everybody can see my screen. Have that little thumbs up. Great. Okay. So it's been great, actually, Matt, to have your insights and things that you really liked, because that's going to speed up my presentation because I go through a few of those and you've already mentioned some of them, which is awesome. But first, some items of note. things that you need to know for when we do launch Officers in Perform. And the first is, what kind of rating types can you actually do and lodge in Perform? And the answer to that is you can lodge energy and water and carbon neutral ratings. So for indoor environment and waste, you'll just continue to do those how you're doing them now between members and rate. The next thing is that a little change with Perform is that invoice details are set at the time that you lodge the rating. So this means that if you need to have a discount applied to your rating, you might have a City Switch voucher, then you need to make sure that you upload that and kind of put that discount into the system before you hit the lodge button. And similarly, we also have this little field here, if I just draw your attention down to the bottom left corner, where you can add a reference to your invoice. We've heard from a few assessor companies that this is really handy internally. If you need to enter in a purchase order number, or maybe it's your assessor code or something that aligns with the rating for your accounts team, this is where you do it. And again, do it before you lodge the rating. So that's that one. And the other couple of things is there are a few little workarounds that we're doing for some ratings like co-assess, but we'll just be in touch with assessors that applies to at the time. So everybody else won't need to worry about it, and we'll give you plenty of information and heads up on what that is. It's very minor. Okay, so on to the next things, and that is Perform logins and lodgement dates. So first thing to note is you'll have plenty of notice of the detailed time frame when we are going to actually have the launch date. And so, yeah, just keep your eye out for that. Then when will you receive your logins? The answer to that question is they will be sent out to you on the day that we do the launch. And that's just a technical thing that happens so that when we kind of send officers live, then all of your emails go out. Obviously, if you're already logging into Perform, if you're doing shopping centre ratings or retired aged care ratings, then you'll already have a login. You won't need to worry about that. So the next thing is, if you have a draft rating in rate coming up close to the launch period, and it doesn't have renewable energy, and you do not wish to lodge your rating, with the renewable electricity data, then we ask that you lodge that rating in rate before the lodge date. Before the launch date, because after the launch date, we would like everybody to lodge their office ratings in Perform, and then you will need to complete the renewable electricity page at that time. So if you need any tips or more information about the renewable electricity data and information that you need to provide, then Zoe will point you to the webinar that's been had already, and obviously there's lots of training that you can go through. So moving on to our new and exciting features that we're looking forward to you using. Firstly, thought it might be fun to just mention that as a design team, we are very passionate about having Perform be as easy for you to use as possible, and making it so that ratings can be more and more accurate over time. We also want the process to be more meaningful, so that, for example, we use data from the last rating to help you with your next rating. And we also want to make the rating process smoother, faster, and more user-friendly. So as Matt was saying, this has already been happening and being witnessed and experienced by assessors that have already been using it, which is really exciting. One of the key reasons for that is because the rating application and the data is all in one place now, which you'll see shortly. Other exciting things are obviously copy and paste, which is the holy grail of efficiency when you're working with lots of data and lots of spreadsheets and lots of rows. So yeah, we're really excited about that. And you can also sort the data and filter within Perform as well, as Matt mentioned. The other thing that we'll be providing is some assessor templates. And the assessor templates will help you to then line up your own spreadsheets, or you can use these ones, so that then you can do your copy and paste directly in. So we'll be providing these, and we'll give you those when we announce the launch date as well, so that if you want to do some pre-prep for the launch, you can. The other thing that we're enabling is that you can use data from the last rating to help you with the next rating, because we've heard that re-rating a building over time, sometimes there's like lots of details that might not change, and then having to enter that data in again can cause errors for unnecessary reasons. So we enable you to use previous rating data that would stay the same the next year. This is available once there is already a previous rating that is the same rating type for a premises in Perform that's been created in Perform. So might be a bit of a delayed gratification on that one, depending on the building that you're rating. And certainly if you haven't rated a building in an office building in Perform yet, then this won't be available for that first rating. And the next thing is that you can spot errors more easily because we have some data summary comparisons at the top of each page that you can use so that you can do this kind of check and be like, oh, that's a bit funny. That number doesn't look right. And then you can investigate that before you get to the level 1 process. So it's basically enabling you to work more efficiently and make sure the level 1 certification process is more efficient as well. And similarly, this happens on a review summary page, which we'll show you later, where you can see those differences again, little yellow highlight on that page as well. And as Matt talked about, there's level 1 messages. So on each page, we'll show you there's some fairly specific boxes where you can enter in some messages and things, but there might be some general messages for the whole rating. You might want to point the tech officer to a ruling that had been approved for this particular premises in the past or something like that. So there's rating messages that appear all on all within Perform, and they're all visible on every single page. And as you go, you can enter those in. The level 1 auditor will see them, and they'll always be there visible on a rating. So a level 1 auditor, if they check a past rating within Perform, then they will see those. So that helps them to maybe not ask questions twice because they can refer back to those as they go. And the other thing that's happening with our transition to Perform is the level 2 process is also then going to be happening within Perform. And within that same rating workflow. So you'll be able to see everything all within the rating that you've already done. There's a few streamlined and improvements to this process as well, which we're excited about telling you about. And again, there's just messages that will be visible to NABERS and the assessor and the auditor, like all together. So a lot more transparency there for the process, which we're really excited about, but there'll be more information about that coming up shortly as well. So next is our live demo. So I'll just do a bit of screen changing around here. If you bear with me. Pop everyone up there. And now we're going to go into having a look at what Perform actually looks like. So can I get a thumbs up? Looks like my screen's all good. Great, thanks Zoe. Okay, so when you log into Perform, this is what you'll be greeted with. A nice little homepage here. It's everything that you would expect. Basically, everything that you can do in Members and Rate, you can now just do in one place completely. You'll see there's a very big blue button here, super easy when you want to create a rating. This is what you'll press. And then I'll just show you down a bit further down the page here. There's some information for assessors, but this is where we have all the assessor templates there for you. So if you'd like to download those and use those to help prepare your rating for your copying and pasting in, that's where you get those. And also we've got some links out to the rules if you need them at the same time. So we're not going to create a new rating from scratch today because we thought we'd just streamline this a little bit and make sure it doesn't take too long. We're going to choose this rating that I already have in draft. Yep. And then you'll see here that on our first, or actually just before we launch into the first page here, noticing that on the left side, you have all the pages listed that are part of your rating, and you can see if they're completed or not based on if they're kind of orangey red or green. So that will always kind of give you a guide as to how you're going and, you know, what's left to do in your rating. All right, so for this rating, we can see that I've chosen an office. It's a whole building rating. And I've also selected that it's going to be an energy and water rating. If I'm going to do a carbon neutral rating with this, I would just look down here and see that I can tick this box to include carbon neutral. As I move forward to the rating period, nothing's really very different about this. You just enter in your rating period start date and Perform does the rest. You'll see that I'm just moving from page to page. As I move from page to page, Perform will save the page for me, but I can also click save if I want to. And then every now and then you'll see that there's an auto save timer on the page. So basically Perform will just save the page for you every 30 seconds as well. All right, getting to entering a premise. So it's pretty simple, but we would like you to use a street number and a street name to find your premises. If your building is part of a larger address, you can use the word tower or building if that's part of the address, and that would be good. There's some other tips here. If you have other, if you're having trouble finding your address, you can just use these tips. If you have any other issues and you still can't find it for some reason, just contact NABERS and we'll help you to find the right one. Once you have used a premises in NABERS Perform before, it will come up and kind of help you to find that premises again. And then you just select it. And then Bob's your uncle, that is all linked in. And then we have this added new feature that if you want to check where your premises is and just kind of make sure you've got the physical address correct, then you can do that by just clicking on the view in map and you'll get the Google map of that. Okay, and then moving on to our contacts page, and you'll see our premises page has just gone green. So with the contacts page, you can enter in your customer up here. You can search our database for a customer or add in a new one at the time. You enter in the customer contact. If you're putting in your customer contact, then they'll have access to view the rating. So they won't be able to edit it, they'll just be able to view it. Then down here, you can enter in other contacts if you need to, again, and then control their access by that access drop down there. Okay. I'm going to pass over on to Rachel now, and she's going to talk you through hours, area, and computers.
Great, thanks, Nick. Hi, everyone. I'm also a designer at NABERS. And I just wanted to start by saying that we had a question in the chat about which scopes are included. We have all three scopes, base, whole, and tenancy are all available on Perform. We're showing just a whole building rating at the moment. There are obviously differences between the attributes that you get asked for in each of those ratings, and those are reflected in the tool. We're not going to show the nuances between those at the moment. But just sort of keep that in mind, that is there for you. But so our goal when we were sort of designing this page was to streamline it and make sure that everything we ask for is either required by the calculation or really valuable for their level 1 audit. So we tested with a lot of assessors and a lot of our internal L1 auditors, and we ultimately decided to choose to collect all of the data in one single page, meaning that it's all in one big table in one place and you can enter it all at the same time. So this means, and we are aware that it means that it's quite a large table, and we're open to feedback as we go along. But one thing that we have done to sort of make this easier for you that Nick's showing right now is that we've frozen those first two columns, the level and tenancy and space description fields, which means that you can scroll along in that table without losing the functional space that you're referring to. And so hopefully that will help you navigate that data more easily. A notable change that we made in the design process was adding a column at the start of this table that asks if the area is excluded. So what that means is that if you wish to include those NLA areas, those functional spaces that are excluded from the NLA, you can do that and not be required to add in that dummy data that we found that assessors were, having to add in. And so by answering yes to that question, the subsequent columns become disabled and you can calculate that rating without having to add in any data there. Some more improvements we made were to the hours columns. So now instead of having to enter your hours and minutes in 2 separate columns, you've got them all in the one place, which seems small, but I know that it should make a lot of people happy. And then the other thing is that the AHAC hours and unusual hours are being entered in the one column. And that's because there's no sort of case where a functional space is using both of those and they both contribute to the calculation in the same way. And then also with hours, we've updated the options listed under the evidence for core hours to be more aligned with the rules. So we can see we've sort of separated it out into like the 3 different types of OTA hours methods. So you have OTA hours with BMS data and then -2. Then we've also got those TOS, average, default, all of those are there for you. The most important thing to note here is that the OTA hours -2 method, if you select that, the deduction that is applied to your calculation for that functional space will be applied automatically by the system. So what you need to do is you need to make sure that you're entering the hours as they appear on the lease and not doing any prior calculations before you put it into this table. The other thing that's very similar to that is that for whole building and tenancy ratings, if you're using OTA hours methods, that OTA hours -5 deduction is also going to be applied automatically to the calculation. And you'll see that reflected in that total hours per week column that we show you at the end of the table. But so the most important thing to note is you don't need to do those prior calculations, just put the hours in as they appear on the lease and select the method accordingly. You don't need to select the method for the OTA hours -5, that will just be reflected on if you select a OTA method. Then underneath the table, we're now displaying a floor plate graph, and that groups the NLA of each of your functional spaces by the value that you've listed in the level column. And so this is going to help you spot errors much easier than previously. And so to get the most out of this graph, you're going to want to make sure that you're sort of listing you're using the same value for the level field against those functional spaces that you want to group. So you can see here, we've got level 1.1 and level 1. They're showing as 2 separate bars in that graph. If we just change them to both saying level 1, you can see that when it's refreshed, we can see they're both grouped. So it's up to you how you want to group that data and how you want to use that table, but that is there for you. Aside from the table, there are a few questions that you may need to answer at the bottom of the page, depending on the data you've entered. They would all be quite familiar to you. And then, as we've sort of mentioned before, we have this general messages module at the bottom of the page. Sorry, Nick, just up a little bit. That text box is at the bottom of every single page, and you can add in any information that you think is relevant that, if you didn't have a space to add it in a question that we asked for, you can add it in there and it will be visible to the level 1 auditor. Great. So something else I'll note is that the save feature, you can just navigate between pages. There's a save button. We also have the auto save feature that saves every 30 seconds. But if you just navigate between pages, if the page is able to save, it will save. So moving on now to consumption data, you'll find 2 electricity pages now. So with the introduction of the REI, we've renamed the electricity page to grid electricity, and we have a new page called renewable electricity. So in that renewable electricity page, that's where you'll enter in all of the data that goes towards the REI, except for green power that is part of your utility meter bills that will still be on a utility meter inclusion. But everything else goes here, and you can refer to the REI training module for more information about this. We won't be going into it in too much detail now. But so if we go back to the grid electricity hub, this is where you can add all of your inclusions and exclusions. It's all very familiar to how you have it at the moment. You can add utility meter, non-utility meter, and other exclusions like small end use or things like that. We'll look at a utility meter inclusion now, and we will give a lovely demonstration of the copy and paste feature, which has been, you know, touted the whole way through. It's all very exciting. And so Nick's going to open up the assessor template, which we've pre-filled. We'll just copy all of those values across in one go, and then we'll use the shortcut key Control-Shift-V, selecting that first cell, and it will populate the table. Really important is that, or really exciting, I guess, is that you don't have to add rows before you copy this data in. Say you had 15 rows of data, just copy it all across, and those rows will be added automatically for you. So that is probably the most exciting thing. I know a lot of assessors always comment on it. We also have this consumption graph at the bottom of the page that is, you know, helping you spot errors. That's something that you have at the moment. So now the rest of the consumption pages, so we have gas, diesel, and water if it's a water rating, they're all very similar to the grid electricity page. You're adding your inclusions and exclusions in a similar way, so we won't sort of show those here in interest of time. But at this point, if you're ready to, if you have all of your data in the system, we've got all of our little green circles in our navigation menu, we're ready to calculate our rating. And we do that from this review summary page with this big blue button, very obvious button, calculate rating. So just clicking that, it'll take a little minute to do its work. And it will pump out all of the rating outputs here for you in an easy to read format, with the exciting addition of the renewable energy indicator results. Everything else is all the same as it currently is in Offices in rate. And then at the bottom of the page, we have all of the rating inputs, all of those calculated outputs that come out of all of the different pages. They're all listed in like one single place on this page. And if you had a previous rating that was lodged in Perform, like Nick said earlier, this is where you would see that in the column to the right, and you'd see those little yellow dots if their values were different between the two. So this is how you can see and compare really quickly between all of your data points. So we're now to the point of lodging the rating, and I'll hand back to Nick to do that.
Thanks, Rachel. So yes, this is where we go to lodge the rating. So we're on the certification process screen. If there is a rating that can be renewed or replaced, it's where it will appear here, so that you can select that there. And then most of this is very similar to what you'd be used to in Members. You have fields where you can edit the customer organisation name or the premises name, so it appears on the certificate in a particular way if it's different to how it's already been entered. You can also select the public listing here on this page. As I was discussing earlier, if you have a discount, this is where you would upload your voucher so that that discount is applied to the rating. You can check your rating fee here, check your company's invoicing details to make sure they're all correct, and then, as we said earlier, enter in if there's an internal code. You can enter that in here that applies. The one difference is that the customer authorization needs to come in the form of an email when we launch Offices in Perform. It's something on our list of things to do, a great many list of things to do, so that customers could kind of log in and then approve the rating for you automatically. But just at the moment, we haven't been able to build that feature, so that will be coming shortly. But for now, you need to get that email from a customer that says, yes, I authorize the rating and I'm aware of the result. Upload that here so the level 1 auditor can check that, and then you'll be able to proceed with your lodgement. Assessor declarations are all happening here on this page as well. And that's about it. Then you lodge your rating, and then that goes across to our level 1 audit queue in Perform, and then a tech officer will pick that up and have a look at it for you. So once the tech officer does certify the rating, then the certificate and report will be emailed out to you and the customer automatically. If for some reason you need to go back and look at that certificate and report later, and you think, oh, I can't find that email, where was that? You don't have to worry. You can always go and find that over here in your list of ratings, where you'll see that I have a certified current rating. Where I can go back to the certification process page. And here, my certificate and reports are sitting and waiting for me. I can just download those and they're right there. So that pretty much concludes the tour and the live demo. As Rachel has said, as James has said, as Zoe has said, we're really interested in receiving lots of feedback about how this is, and we'll be reaching out for that feedback as well. So always interested, and you're always welcome to let us know how it's going, or if there's any issues that you're finding with it. We'd love to hear that. And yeah, I guess it's been a long time coming, but we're really excited about this release, and it's the biggest release that we've probably ever done in a way. And yeah, we've just taking our time to do lots of testing for you and try and make sure, to the best of our ability, it's as robust and ready for you to use as possible when we launch. So back to you, Zoe.
Great. Well, hope everyone's enjoyed that quick tour through the system. We've had a bunch of questions and comments in the meeting chat, so thank you everyone for posting those. And people have been getting in there and trying to give responses from the NABERS team to some of those questions. But I think it's probably a good idea to have a chat about some of those, and we've got a little bit of time. There are a couple of questions around the co-assess stuff. I think we can answer that by just saying there's a separate process for co-assess that we will work as a sort of workaround. A little bit later in the year, we'll come out with that being integrated into Perform, and we're going to be talking to all of the assessors who do co-assess separately, so keep an eye out for some phone calls and comms from us around that. So we'll come with more information. A couple of questions around the connection, I guess, between carbon neutral ratings and also the indoor environment and waste ratings. So Atif asked, for indoor environment ratings and waste ratings, the option of completing a combined rating with the same rating number isn't available, is that correct? And David Bullock had a similar question around when lodging carbon neutral ratings for a shopping centre or Perform, the platform cannot separate the energy and water rating from the carbon neutral certification. So I wonder if one of you guys from the NABERS team can just talk about that relationship between the IE ratings, the waste ratings, and the carbon neutral ratings in Perform.
Yeah, I can talk about IE and waste, and Rachel can address the carbon neutral and the energy. So yes, with IE and waste, they will need to be continued to be launched in members, and yeah, they will need to be a separate rating basically.
Yep. And then for the carbon neutral question, I think that was asking about the certification process in Perform. And with this release, we have updated that. So the carbon neutral and energy and water components of a rating are sort of now decoupled for certification in Perform. So that means that you can have the rating be certified for energy and water, and then have the rating be certified for carbon neutral a little later on, within 10 business days or 20 business days, however long it is, I can't remember, sorry. But yeah, that has been updated with this release.
And you need to tick that it will have a carbon neutral component.
Yep, so where Nick showed on the page, on that rating details page, you'll need to tick that you want to include carbon neutral in the rating. And then it all happens the same way as what it's currently happening in members, where you'll upload those spreadsheets to the rating. You'll do that in the rating messages at the bottom of the screen. And then later on, we'll be building carbon neutral into the platform as well. So we'll be moving off the spreadsheet eventually.
Amazing. A nice and simple question. Do you need to be connected to the internet the whole time while working in Perform?
Yes, that's a yes to that one, because it is a cloud tool. then yes, you will need to have internet connection in order to be editing your rating.
I thought that was the right answer.
Yeah. Yep.
And a couple of questions around that interaction between the spreadsheets. So one of the questions from Vlad, can you export the input-output rating information spreadsheet like you can in the old portal? So can you pull it out of the system?
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have that feature yet. So yeah, we can't do exporting into one big magic spreadsheet. But as James has also mentioned in the chat, which is great, but you can copy and paste from your rating tables, or like say from your grid electricity table, you can, if you know there's something that you've changed or whatever, you can always copy and paste that back into your spreadsheet if you need to. Yeah, that's something, again, it's on our list of things to do.
And also, I'll just add to that, with the rating inputs listed at the bottom of the review summary page, they're all sort of in an easy column that you can also copy and paste out if that's the data that you're needing.
Fantastic. We have a question about the training and exams. Will future NABERS assessors use Perform when doing the exam, or will they still use NABERS Rate? And we have answered that in the chat to say the training modules for future assessors will all be updated and to the Perform platform. And I believe we've already re-recorded a few of those things. So they will be ongoing from now on. That's the training that new assessors will do. There's a few questions around the notification to the customer and kind of the time frame that happens. So I wonder if someone can have a chat about sort of at what point does the building owner become notified in the system, and when are you entering their details, but you might still be working on the rating itself?
Yeah, sure. So on the customer screen, when you invite the customer to have access to the rating, that's literally when they'll get that email. So if you choose not to invite them, you know, for a period of time, you could be doing your draft rating for a little while. Yeah, that's totally up to you, basically, when you enter in the customer details in order for them to authorize the rating. But you can do that anytime before you lodge, as long as it's done by lodgement time.
So you might do that right at the end when you're ready for them to have a look at.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the order of the pages in the left-hand bar, that doesn't, you know, that's just the order that we kind of think is logical and it works for design. But yeah, there's no, you know, nobody's making you enter the information in that order at all.
Okay. And related to that, can you enter multiple authorizers and delete them out once they've kind of well, the question says and delete once entered. So I guess how much editing do you have over those customer contacts?
Yeah, you can edit those. If you enter someone and then delete someone, you can do that. You can also see the contact history. There's a sort of toggle at the top of the table that shows who sort of, you know, the history of who was given access to the rating. Something else to note just on that point, you will have to add contacts before you can calculate the rating. So all of those sort of the green dots need to be green in order to be able to calculate the rating. So contacts do have to be added before that point.
Good point. Thank you, Rachel.
That's right.
And there was a question from Joyce around the previous rating data visibility, and does the same assessor have to have lodged that rating? I do know the answer to that. No, it's that's attached to the rating building or the space that's being rated. That's right, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. So if once a previous rating has been lodged in Perform, then the next time that same, let's call it an address with the same rating type, when that has been entered into Perform, then whoever is doing the rating at that point will have access to that previous rating data. That's to make sure it's easier for everybody, you know, whenever they're doing a rating.
Yeah, great.
Yep.
So we do have a couple of other questions that we've either said already in the chat that we'll come back to people after offline with an answer or once we have the information. And so I want to say thanks to everyone from the NABERS team for jumping in with those answers, and everyone for the comments and questions. We do really appreciate it. And we do have one final question from Helen asking the big question: when will Perform be released and when will assessors start using it? And that's really part of the the final comments, the recap for the whole session. So we'll start that the closing and recap now with that question, which this is really a preview and a sneak peek of the platform. We wanted everyone to have a look at it, see what it looks like, especially for all the assessors who do lots of ratings and will need to kind of hit the ground running as soon as we hit launch. But haven't used the platform before. So this is really a chance to have a look, see what it looks like, see how it works, kind of be reassured that there's nothing weird or strange or too scary in there. And we, as soon as we know the date for the launch, and we will give you absolutely plenty of forewarning on this, we will send out that confirmation of the date as well as the timelines and some suggested lead times at which point you might want to, for example, be collecting that REI data, even if you think you might get it in before the launch, but you might not. And so we'll share some timelines on that, and as soon as that data is set in stone, we will let you know. It will happen this quarter, so it is coming, but it's not happening tomorrow. There's plenty of time. There's plenty of time to do the ratings that you're currently working on. So do keep an eye out in your inbox, and we will come out as soon as we have that all set. We'll also be sharing some new data templates to collect that data and use that great new copy and paste function. So we'll share those as well. And in the meantime, we will also come out, there was a question around the recording of this session. We will be sharing that with everyone who attended and all the assessors who couldn't make it today, and that will be available on our website as well. We'll also be resharing the REI training link, the Perform FAQ pages that we've already built onto our page. And we'll have some of the questions, if there's anything new in this session that popped up, we'll make sure that those are reflected in the FAQ page as well. So this has been really helpful for us to make sure that all the things that you will need to know are there. And kind of, I guess, to close out, I would like to say a really massive thank you to everyone for being here, and for sharing with us your insights and what it looks like, and all of the information that the design team have shared with us, taking us through this really hard work. We really appreciate it. And what we really hope from the NABERS perspective is that you're as excited about the Perform platform as we are. You're comfortable with it, it makes sense, and you've seen some of those features that are coming and can't wait to get in there and get using it. So hopefully we've done our job today and gotten everyone keen to use the platform. The best way, if you need help, as I said, we've got the FAQ page already up, and we will update that again. And of course, coming through our NABERS inbox is the best place to ask us for help. And as we get into that launch and rollout phase, we do know that that's going to be a really busy time, and we don't want any downtime. We know that, with CPD required ratings, those timeframes are really important. So we have extra hands on deck over that rollout period to answer questions, to give assistance, to iron out any kinks. So don't hesitate to get in touch with us. Once you're kind of in and using it, you will receive all those notifications, the launch, the logins, everything. So please keep an eye on your inbox and look out for an email from us. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you at the next one. Close out music.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.